How did Native Americans bring down massive animals with nothing but wood, stone, and patience? How did hunters face creatures that could outrun, outfight, or even trample them, and still return home with food for the entire tribe? What did they know about the land, the wind, and animal behavior that modern hunters often overlook? It sounds impossible. Yet long before firearms, these methods fed entire nations for thousands of years. And you may think success came from strength, but what if survival depended far more on strategy than power? Tonight, we uncover the forgotten techniques that allowed Native American hunters to thrive in some of the harshest wilderness on Earth. Today, we're exploring traditional hunting methods used by Native Americans before firearms. If you want to uncover the secrets behind these ancient techniques and see how primitive tools shaped survival for thousands of years, you can subscribe now and start this journey with us before it unfolds. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how ancient hunters succeeded without modern weapons. Across the vast plains, towering forests, frozen tundra, and winding rivers of North America, survival depended on a deep relationship with the land. Food was never guaranteed. Seasons shifted, herds migrated, and danger lurked in every hunt. For Native American communities, hunting was not just about skill, it was about knowledge, patience, teamwork, and a profound respect for nature. Every successful hunt meant warmth, nourishment, tools, and survival for families through brutal winters that showed no mercy to the unprepared. These were not primitive people stumbling through the wilderness hoping for luck. These were highly skilled, deeply intelligent people who had mastered their environment over countless generations, developing systems so sophisticated that they sustained entire civilizations for millennia. Oh, and tonight we are going to explore exactly how they did it. Before a weapon was ever raised, before a hunter even stepped into the open, the hunt had already begun, with the ground itself. Native American hunters could look at a patch of earth and read it like a book. Footprints told them which animal had passed, how large it was, whether it was injured, how fast it was moving, and crucially, how long ago it had been there. A fresh print with crisp, clean edges meant the animal was close. Yet an older print with crumbling walls meant it had passed hours earlier. Moisture in a deer's track could tell an experienced hunter whether it was made before or after the morning dew. But tracking was never just about footprints. Hunters read broken branches at a specific height to identify what animal had brushed through. They noticed displaced stones, disturbed leaves, bent grass, and even changes in the behavior of birds overhead. If a flock suddenly rose in the distance, something had moved through the trees. That something might be dinner. Hunters also used smell. Animals marked territory and paths with scent, and experienced trackers could identify species and even freshness of trail from subtle changes in the air around them. This knowledge was passed down through generations. Fathers teaching sons, elders teaching young hunters around fires at night, describing patterns, warning signs, yet in the subtle language that the land constantly spoke to those willing to listen. Observation was often more powerful than force. A hunter who could find his prey without being found himself had already won half the battle. But finding an animal was only the beginning. The real challenge came next. How did they get close enough to strike without being detected? To approach dangerous prey, a hunter had to essentially disappear into the landscape. Animals like deer, elk, warning, and buffalo possess senses far sharper than our own. A deer can detect human scent from hundreds of yards away. A buffalo herd has lookouts constantly scanning for threats. One wrong move, one snapped twig, one shift in the wind, and the hunt was over before it began. Native American hunters understood this completely and developed sophisticated methods to neutralize these advantages. They rubbed their bodies with mud, crushed plants, and animal dung to mask human scent. A practice that sounds unpleasant but proved extraordinarily effective. Wearing freshly prepared animal hides helped blend both scent and appearance into the natural environment. Some hunters covered themselves in the complete hides of wolves or coyotes and moved on all fours through tall grass, mimicking the movement of predators that prey animals had learned to tolerate at a distance. Others used bird feathers and plant material to break up the human outline. making themselves look like part of the landscape itself. Movement was everything. Experienced hunters moved in slow, deliberate patterns, freezing completely when an animal looked up, moving only when the animal's head was turned, always staying downwind so their scent carried away from the herd rather than toward it. Patience was not optional. A hunter might spend an hour crawling a single 100 yards. They might wait motionless in a hidden position for most of a morning, letting the animal come to them rather than pushing toward it. This discipline separated successful hunters from those who returned home empty-handed. Success depended entirely on patience and environmental awareness. The hunter who could control his own movements and impulses could control the outcome of the hunt. Yet even with perfect stealth, many animals were too fast or too powerful to confront in open ground. Speed alone could not save a hunter from a charging buffalo. So what strategy actually changed the odds in a meaningful way? Sometimes the hunt was not a chase of speed. It was a test of endurance, a slow, relentless pursuit that could last for hours or even most of a day. In open terrain, particularly across the plains and grasslands, hunters sometimes used a strategy that sounds almost unbelievable to modern ears. They simply ran after an animal until it could not run anymore. And this is called persistence hunting, and it exploited one of the few biological advantages humans hold over most four-legged animals. Here is the key. Most animals, including deer and antelope, are built for short bursts of explosive speed. They sprint to escape danger, then stop, cool down, and recover. Their physiology does not support sustained running over long distances in hot conditions. Humans, on the other hand, are extraordinary long-distance runners. We sweat to regulate body heat, and we breathe efficiently, and we can maintain a steady pace for hours without overheating. Our upright posture and specialized leg structure make us some of the best endurance runners in the animal kingdom. A hunter pursuing an antelope did not try to catch it in a sprint. That would be impossible. Instead, he pushed the animal to run again every time it tried to rest. The hunter tracked it relentlessly, staying just visible enough to keep the animal moving. Over hours of midday heat, where the animal's internal temperature rose dangerously, its muscles fatigued, its breathing became labored. Eventually, it could no longer flee. This method required not just physical fitness, but deep knowledge of animal behavior, terrain, and weather. Hunters had to know when to push and when to hold back, how to read the animal's fatigue, and how to navigate the land efficiently to cut off escape routes. Endurance and discipline could defeat raw speed and power. The hunt rewarded persistence over aggression. But what about prey that could not simply be outrun? Massive herds of buffalo, dangerous bears, or animals that required a hunter to strike from a distance? For those challenges, the tools themselves had to evolve. We have just seen how tracking and endurance shaped traditional hunting methods. But the next part of this story, where primitive tools completely change what was possible, is even more incredible. We would love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment below and tell us which method surprised you most. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next discovery. Simple materials transformed by skill and knowledge became extraordinarily effective weapons in experienced hands. Long before the bow and arrow, Native American hunters carried spears, long shafts of carefully selected wood tipped with points shaped from stone, bone, or antler. Crafting a proper spear tip required hours of careful work, or using harder stones to chip away at flint or obsidian until an edge sharp enough to cut through hide and reach vital organs was achieved. This process, called knapping, was itself a specialized skill passed down through generations. Then came one of the most important technological leaps in human history, the atlatl. An atlatl is essentially a spear-throwing device, a short board or stick with a hooked end that cradles the base of a dart or spear. When a hunter threw with an atlatl, it functioned as an extension of the arm, dramatically increasing the lever action of the throw. The result was a projectile launched with significantly greater speed and force than a hand-thrown spear, effectively allowing a hunter to strike from farther away with more power and with less physical risk to himself. The atlatl was used across North America for thousands of years and proved effective against some of the largest animals on the continent. Eventually, the bow and arrow refined the concept further. A well-crafted bow, made from flexible yet strong wood, often Osage orange, ash, or yew, combined with a sinew bowstring and arrows tipped with carefully napped stone points, gave hunters the ability to strike accurately from distances that made the hunt far safer and more practical. The craftsmanship required was extraordinary. Hunters selected wood carefully, dried and shaped it over weeks, reinforced it with sinew wrapping, and tested the draw weight repeatedly. Arrows had to be straight to fly true, and fletching from bird feathers was added to stabilize flight. These were not crude, accidental tools. They were the product of accumulated engineering knowledge, designed, tested, and refined over centuries. Innovation does not require modern technology. It requires observation, creativity, and an intimate understanding of the materials available. Yet even with powerful weapons, some prey was simply too massive or too numerous to tackle alone. The largest hunts required something even more powerful than any individual tool. Some hunts were not the work of one skilled hunter. They were the work of an entire community, functioning as a single coordinated machine. Buffalo were central to survival for many plains tribes, providing not just meat but hides for shelter and clothing, bones for tools, fat for fuel, and sinew for binding and sewing. A single successful communal hunt could provide enough resources to sustain a tribe through months of harsh winter. But buffalo were massive, powerful, and moved in enormous herds. Individual hunting was dangerous and often inefficient. The solution was collective strategy on a remarkable scale. Tribes developed what are known as buffalo drives or buffalo jumps. Hunters, and sometimes dozens or even hundreds of people, would fan out in a wide arc behind a herd and slowly, carefully begin moving toward them, using noise, fire, flags of waving hide, and shouts to direct the animal's movement. The herd, sensing danger but not understanding its source, would begin to move away. Experienced hunters knew the terrain. They guided the herd toward a predetermined route, a valley that narrowed, a passage between hills, or, most dramatically, the edge of a cliff. At the moment the herd reached the drop, it was moving too fast and was too compressed to stop, and animals at the front had no choice. They went over. Hunters waiting below finished the work. These sites, called pishkun in the Blackfoot language, meaning deep blood kettle, have been discovered across the Great Plains, some showing evidence of use over thousands of years. Head-smashed-in buffalo jump in present-day Alberta, Canada, was used continuously for nearly 6,000 years. Forest tribes used different communal methods. They constructed funnels of brush and logs that guided deer toward waiting hunters, or used fire to drive animals toward prepared ambush points. Tribes in river regions used coordinated fishing drives, using nets and weirs to trap large numbers of fish simultaneously. Teamwork multiplied effectiveness in ways that individual skill alone never could. The communal hunt was not just a practical strategy, it was an expression of the community's unity, trust, and shared purpose. But the hunt never ended with the kill. What happened next said as much about these cultures as the hunting itself. Every successful hunt carried responsibility. For many Native American cultures, killing an animal was not simply a transaction. It was a sacred act that came with obligations. To use everything the animal provided, to honor its spirit, and to maintain the balance that made future hunts possible. The meat, of course, fed families. It was smoked, dried into jerky, it mixed with fat and berries into pemmican, a calorie-dense food that could be stored and carried through long winter months. Preservation techniques were sophisticated enough to keep food viable for years, but the hunt provided far more than food. Buffalo hides became robes, blankets, and the covers of teepees. Deer hides were tanned into soft leather for clothing and moccasins. Bones were carved into needles, knives, scrapers, and sleds. Sinew became bowstrings, thread, and lashing. Stomachs and bladders became water containers. Horns became cups and ladles. Fat was rendered for cooking, waterproofing, and burning in lamps. Nothing was wasted because waste was not simply impractical. It was seen as disrespectful. Many tribes performed ceremonies before and after hunts, thanking the animal for its sacrifice, asking forgiveness for the necessity of the kill, and appealing to the spirit world to send more animals in the future. These were not empty rituals. They reflected a worldview in which humans were not the masters of nature, but participants in it, dependent on its balance and responsible for maintaining it. True survival balances necessity with respect. The cultures that understood this sustained themselves for thousands of years without depleting the resources they depended on. But these methods did not exist in a single uniform way across the continent. The land itself demanded different answers in different places. No single method worked everywhere. And across the extraordinary diversity of North America's landscapes, Native American hunters developed strategies as varied as the environments themselves. In the frozen Arctic, Inuit hunters learned to read sea ice with the same precision that Plains hunters read grassland. They hunted seals at breathing holes in the ice, waiting motionless with harpoons for hours in temperatures that would kill an unprepared person in minutes. They pursued walrus and whales in skin boats, working in coordinated teams on open water. Their knowledge of ice behavior, ocean currents, and animal migration routes was accumulated over thousands of years of refinement. In the dense forests of the Northeast and Pacific Northwest, stealth and trapping became paramount. Hunters constructed elaborate snares and deadfall traps from wood, stone, and cordage, mechanisms triggered by the animal's own weight or movement. A well-placed trap could work continuously, even while the hunter slept, multiplying the tribe's hunting effectiveness without requiring constant active pursuit. In the desert Southwest, water was the key to everything. Hunters tracked animals to scarce water sources and waited in concealment for them to appear. They read the land for signs of underground water that animals knew about instinctively, and used that knowledge to predict where prey would be found, even in the harshest conditions. Great Basin tribes developed rabbit drives using large nets woven from plant fiber, communal events in which entire groups worked together to drive jackrabbits into nets stretched across open ground, harvesting large numbers at once. Coastal tribes became master fishermen, constructing fish weirs from stone and wood across rivers, learning the exact timing of salmon runs with a precision that would impress modern biologists, and developing specialized hooks, nets, and spears for different species. Each environment demanded not just different tools, but different ways of thinking, different relationships with animals, different reading of seasonal cycles, different forms of cooperation and knowledge. Adaptability ensured long-term survival. The cultures that thrived were those that remained flexible, curious, and willing to learn from every experience the land provided. What we have explored tonight is not simply a collection of ancient techniques. It is a testament to human intelligence, creativity, and our capacity to understand and work with the natural world rather than against it. Native American hunters did not have the technological advantages we take for granted today. They had no firearms, no vehicles, no GPS, no modern materials. What they had was something arguably more valuable: generations of accumulated knowledge, profound respect for their environment, and a community committed to survival together. They tracked prey with their eyes and read the land with knowledge that took lifetimes to develop. They moved through wilderness so silently that animals with senses far sharper than our own had no warning of their approach. They ran alongside their prey for hours under open skies until the hunt resolved itself through endurance. They crafted weapons of wood and stone with engineering precision. They worked together in numbers that turned individual vulnerability into collective power. And when the hunt was done, they used every part of what the land had provided and gave thanks for it. These methods fed nations. They sustained civilizations for thousands of years across every type of terrain this continent offers. And they leave us with a question worth sitting with long after this video ends. What might we learn, not just about survival, but about our relationship with the natural world, if we paid closer attention to what these cultures understood so deeply? The story of traditional hunting methods used by Native Americans before firearms does not end here. If you want to keep exploring primitive tools, ancient survival skills, and the hidden wonders of human history, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a discovery. The next chapter reveals even more forgotten techniques, and every discovery brings you one step closer to the secrets that history has kept hidden for centuries. We will see you there.